Hello, this is Paul the Yoka Knight, and today I'd like to do a follow-on to my earlier video that I did focusing on the 1989 season for Replay Baseball based on their 1990 release of that same season. Now, one of you guys commented that, what am I doing putting video out there on a game that's like 30 years old? And well, I thought it was a good game, but partially that's part of it. The other part of it is the game hasn't changed that much in 30 years. So the game you would buy today isn't really all that different than the game you would have bought in 1990. But that being the case, I want to go ahead and talk about the new version that I bought in the electronic version, the PDF files. Okay, so I bought the base game as well as the 2021 season in their electronic form. So really all I got back was the PDF files in an email. Now first I'd like to say is that, hey man, they took, I don't know, less than half a day to get me the PDF files. I sent it out in the evening of one day and it was there the morning of the next. So you can't ask for much better than that. Now what I got in those files, I'd like to go through it with you. All right, so what you see here is the actual rule book. Now, I made a point in the previous video that the rules were one page long. Well, they're more than one page long now, and they have a rule book. But a lot of it is clarification. It's not like there's a whole bunch more rules. There's some, but it's really not that different than what was there in 1990. First point I'd like to make is that this PDF file, and it's all part of one big gigundous PDF file with everything laid out one after the next, is simply printed out in booklet format on my 17 by 11 printer. Now the magic about 1711 printers are that they are twice what an 8.5 by 11 printer can print. 17 by 11 printers are not that expensive, as I found out. The one that I have is by Canon, and it cost me about $180 a couple years ago. But with that, I'm able to print out any manual I want that's in a standard 8.5 by 11 format that's organized like a booklet. And you can see here, I've got the staples holding it together, and the staples are held together by a stapler that I bought on the cheap. This is a very inexpensive stapler, so that I can go ahead and make my own booklets, which is what I did here. The booklet begins with a general introduction to the game, along with some information as far as what's on the card, but they get into more detail later. We get into batters, what's important to know about batters, followed by an example of ballparks. One of the differences between the 1990 version and today is that they actually have ballpark effects that you can use. It's optional, you don't have to. It's not a huge difference, but it is a difference as far as the characteristics that each individual ballpark can have on the game. So this tells you a little bit about that, followed by an example of play, followed by, this is what they call their scouting guide. So it tells you kind of what all these numbers mean on the cards. So that's very nice. And then a little bit more about basics about the game, about fielding, about base running, about bunt and hit and run plays, which are special plays, as well as stolen bases, how all that works. Stolen bases are based on the cards. There's an optional rule, and they do add optional rules to this version, where you can have manager-controlled stealing, but here it's the card control. You get to choose. Pitcher endurance for both starting pitchers and relief pitchers. It describes all that. Some pitchers are more ground ball pitchers. Some pitchers are fly ball pitchers. If they're one extreme or the other, they have adjustments for that, as well as various other things. In this part of the book, they go into options. Okay. Optional rules are there to help you decide how you want to play the game. You can go ahead and play it as the stock rules, or you can play it for the options if you prefer those. And things like resting pitchers. If you're playing a multi-game series, it gives you some guidelines as far as how that would work. Different ways where stolen bases can happen. So it gives you some flexibility as to how the game works. But basically, if you stick to the base game, you're not going to go that wrong. And since this was an e-version, it came in a PDF file. I can print out as many of these as I want. Something happens to one of them, it gets messed up, I just print out another one. Piece of cake. The base game also comes with a rare plays book. Certain plays that can happen will trigger a possibility of a rare play. And if that possibility is confirmed, it's going to get you into the rare plays book where weird stuff can happen. Maybe player ejections and just weird stuff. Maybe a triple play, that would be cool. All that stuff I'm pretty sure is in here. Then there's the player 8 cards. Now, the previous game had this perfect bound book where you had tab 1, tab 2, tab 3, and all of that. This one, it just gives you player 8 cards, which I did on 80-pound linen paper. Okay, so it's nice quality paper. And then I went ahead and sprayed them with clear coat satin lacquer. And what I have is very serviceable, and the inkjet printing is not going to run because I put on the lacquer. Okay, it's quite nice. This is for columns 1 and 2. Columns 1 and 2, when that is called for based on the column die. Column 3 and 4. Column 5 and 6. Remember, 4 is the fielder column, so we're going to look at the fielder rather than the pitcher as far as the defense. And then other things that are used less commonly, so I put them on their own cards and I went them two-sided with them. I have the action chart. So if a guy's attempting to steal or something, this will give me some guidance as far as that goes. Third base coach. Guys are going to stick. Guys are going to run. It's on the third base coach. Offense plays, hit and run, and bunting. These are plays that you as the manager can call. This last one is actually the game board. Now, I think the game board is actually supposed to be smaller than this. This is 8.5 by 11. From what I saw, maybe it's 5 by 7 or something like that. But I went ahead and printed this off. I put my satin coat lacquer on top, and I went ahead and did a hard-bound and backed version of the game board. It's beautiful. There's nothing wrong with this. I don't think you'd get much better if you actually bought it this way. So if you guys are interested in learning more about that, I could let you know. But if you look at my YouTube videos that I have linked in, you will see that the Dining Room Print and Play guy is pretty much my inspiration for this. And what he has to say works. That's what you get with the actual base part of the game. I also bought the 2021 season. And with the 2021 season, first off, you get this cool booklet that gives you all kind of information on the season, basically including, of course, the standings. Here's the record of who is the Cy Young winner, who's the Golden Glove winners, who's the batting champion, all that kind of stuff, as well as things like here where we have multi-team batters, guys who got traded during the season. You see what they batted before and after the trade. And 2021 pitchers, guys who were multi-team, and it goes on. The chart continues on. It gives you the standings league by league. Here's the American League. Here's more guys who were traded during the year. Let's see what we got. More multi-team pitchers. Here's the batting leaders for the American League. Here's the pitching leaders for the American League, so you see who was on top of their game during that year. And then it's going to have the similar thing for the National League, and I'll skip ahead. And then they go ahead and give you a synopsis of each and every team in Major League Baseball and what their challenges were coming into the season, which is kind of cool. It helps you decide which team you might be interested in playing in more detail, or at least the guys you might be interested in putting in your league. And one of the cool things that I really like here is a chart that with a single 2d6 roll, done in decimal fashion, you can go ahead and determine the winner of a game. So you have the home team, whoever it is, the visiting team, whoever it is, you roll 2d6 and boom, you got the winner of the game. If you're doing a league and you're wanting to go ahead and have a certain interest in your team, that you go ahead and actually play with the cards each individual game, you can go ahead and basically simulate play with everybody else, which is really kind of a neat thing. You have that routinely in computerized versions of baseball, but in card and cardboard versions, this is the first I've seen it, so this is really nice. Now, one of the differences between the prior versions and the newer versions is that they actually have ballpark cards. And so what I did is they have two versions of this in the game. They have the 1d6 version, which is what this is. And because it's conveniently the correct shape, I went ahead and laminated it into my plastic pouch so that it's basically indestructible. And then you have, for every team, you also have the record of the team, as well as the generic batter lineup. So if you just wanted to play a game using what was used most commonly, here you go. Followed by the detailed roster that I went ahead and printed out on the reverse side. And so you can go ahead and help manage the team. Here's your lineup card, if you will. And if you wanted the 2D6 version of the ballpark, you have that as well. Guaranteed rate field. Oh man, is that inspirational or what? And then you get all the cards for all the individual teams. So here I got the Chicago White Sox. And you see it's basically got the same 6x6 matrix that you saw in the 1990 version of the game. Partly why I didn't feel bad about putting that out there, because it's not that different. And then you got, the fielder's ratings. You've got how good he is, what positions he plays. So this guy, this is a pitcher. The guys in blue are pitchers. And one of the nice things is they actually print some of the statistics down at the bottom of the card. They didn't used to do that. You had to use that one card that had all those tiny little numbers. Well, here you get a fair share of them right on the card itself. So, I would look straight for the ERA and the innings pitched. So 178 innings, 3.53 ERA. This guy was a regular guy, and he had about a 3.5 ERA. Cool. Here's his card. He's good for 6 innings, but if he's doing well, 6 innings plus the next batter. So if it's the next batter that gets on base that makes him tired after 6. So it could go however long it goes. In the case, I just played a game with this guy, and he did a scoreless complete game, because if you're scoreless, then you never tire. You just keep going. So he went the whole entire game and got a 0 ERA for that game. And unlike the other game where it was a single line for the pitcher results, this is you're rolling 1 die for the column. You're also rolling an additional die for the pitcher. So it gets you into this matrix. Unless he's on his tired side, which is the B side, in which case you don't worry about the pitcher die, you just worry about the column. Remember, the column 4 is for the fielder. That's why they have all these fielder positions directly printed on the card, so you don't have to look at a chart anymore. It's right here. Cool. On the batter side, I just picked a guy at random. Here is it looks like a utility everything guy. A little bit more of an outfielder. 2 is good in the outfield. 4 is good on the infield. For some reason, they make them opposite each other. But anyway, this is a Mr. Defense, I would say. And he has a 220 average. Okay, not that great, but this guy can play darn near any position except catcher. So he's a useful guy. Here's his batting matrix. The colored ones are for ones where the ballpark takes precedence over what's printed. So if you're using the ballpark rule, and it's optional, you don't have to, but if you are, then you're going to roll in the ballpark card, and that's going to take the place of the shaded result. What I did is so far I've printed out about 200 cards, so 4 full teams plus pieces of others. And I'm going to go ahead and probably print out maybe 10 teams. So in the grand scheme of things, it's about a wash if you buy the printed version from the company versus PDF and then print it yourself for a given season. But the issue is there's so many teams I just don't care about. So if I print out 1 in 3 of the teams, that's probably about as much as I'm going to want. With the base game itself, it's an absolute win to go print and play. You're gonna do far better with the print and play version as far as the cost of what you do versus what you would get if you actually bought the full thing from the company, as long as you're willing to do a little work on your own and maybe have some equipment to help you out. So that's what I got. If you have not yet subscribed, I would greatly appreciate it. This very video was inspired by a subscriber. So I do listen to you, and I generally write back to you. So for now, this is Paul, the Oka Knight, wishing you all a pleasant evening.